Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. Today we consider Sebastián Andrés Beccacece, an Argentine football manager whose trajectory, if you will, reads like a practical seminar in modern coaching. Youth development, high-intensity structures, and tactical preparation across clubs and a national team. I am Alexei, and I shall attempt to keep my enthusiasm within reasonable parameters of academic decorum.
Hi, I am Priyanka. I will be listening carefully and asking questions when I get curious, which is often.
To frame our discussion, Beccacece is best defined as an Argentine professional manager born in Rosario in December 1980. He is known for early immersion in coaching, a methodological emphasis on youth development, and a taste for high-intensity training with precise match planning. The key elements we observe include, first, a long apprenticeship as an assistant to Jorge Sampaoli across Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and with national teams. Second, multiple head coach stints in Argentina and Chile, plus Elche in Spain. Third, a recent international chapter with Ecuador, culminating at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It is crucial to understand the functional distinction between assistant and head coach in this context. Assistants, particularly in South American high-performance environments, often orchestrate granular tasks, opposition analysis, training microcycles, and pedagogical reinforcement, while the head coach integrates those layers into a unifying strategy and public accountability structure. Let's define several terms we will use. Apertura and clausura denote split-season formats common in Latin American leagues. The Copa Sudamericana is a continental competition below the Copa Libertadores, analogous in simpler terms to a secondary European Cup. The Recopa Sudamericana is a super cup between the champions of Libertadores and Sudamericana. World Cup qualifiers are the regional tournaments that determine who reaches the finals. And the round of 32, as the phrase suggests, is a single elimination stage of 32 teams. In this taxonomy, we can situate Beccacece's achievements with precision.
So yeah, moving on. Can we say the assistant role gave him a kind of laboratory to test ideas before leading a project himself?
Fundamentally, yes. Assistants operate as methodological co-authors. When one later becomes head coach, the accumulated design patterns translate into autonomy and occasionally courage to take difficult posts midstream. Now, relevance. Contemporary football management is a multivariable optimization problem. Resources, player development, cultural alignment, tournament cadence. Strategies that reconcile short-term stability with long-term identity confer competitive advantage. A recurrent misunderstanding is to treat the move from assistant to head coach as a simple promotion. In reality, it is a categorical change in responsibility, including public narrative management, stakeholder negotiation, and the personal risk of resigning when institutional alignment frays. Beccacece's career offers a valuable case study in these transitions.
I guess that helps explain why he often arrived in turbulent contexts. It makes me wonder how he decided when the fit was right.
Let's start with the history. Born in Rosario, a city saturated with football culture, Beccacece played briefly as a right back at amateur level, before pivoting early to coaching. He began at Newell's Old Boys with children as young as 4, and later at Club Renato Cesarini with the 1989 and 1990 age groups. This, we observe, forged his pedagogical discipline. In 2002, he met Jorge Sampaoli. By 2003, he was Sampaoli's assistant at Sport Boys in Peru, then Coronel Bolognesi, Sporting Cristal, O'Higgins, Emelec, and Universidad de Chile. As Sampaoli's assistant, he shared in Universidad de Chile's dominant run in 2011 and 2012, including the Copa Sudamericana title of 2011. With Chile's national team, again on Sampaoli's staff, they qualified for the 2014 World Cup and won the 2015 Copa America, the first in Chile's history. It is worth noting that their resignation occurred amid federation turmoil involving then-President Sergio Jadue. The public record is noisy, and we should avoid over-interpreting individual legal or ethical assignments of responsibility. Moving forward, in January 2016, Beccacece took his first major head coach post at Universidad de Chile. There were flashes, an 8-1 win over O'Higgins, yet continental elimination and inconsistency led to a mutual parting in September 2016, a spell remembered, among other things, for one icy moment when he famously kicked a freezer near the bench in frustration.
Building on that, I'm curious about what draws you, personally, to these coaching arcs. Is it the pattern of returns to the same club, or the assistant-to-head transition itself?
Speaking of patterns, I am drawn to the interplay between institutional fit and managerial agency. As in chess, certain positions invite the same piece back to the same square, because the geometry favors it. Defensa y Justicia appears to have been such a square for Beccacece. This brings us to three larger questions. First question, historical in nature. What if, reportedly, Beccacece had accepted Marcelo Bielsa's invitation after the 2010 World Cup to join Chile's staff? The adverb reportedly must stay attached. Contemporaneous confirmations are scarce. Had he joined Bielsa, he might have integrated into a different mentorship network, with an alternative set of tactical emphases and timing of opportunities. Remaining with Sampaoli instead produced a period of sustained success at Universidad de Chile and later with Chile's national team. We can infer that continuity granted him accelerated exposure to knockout football, high-pressing systems, and the pragmatic art of tournament management. A Bielsa path might have offered a more ascetic training grammar, earlier entry into certain European dialogues perhaps, but at the cost of severing the specific ladder that led to his pivotal head roles.
I'm curious about assistants here. Does the mentor define the trajectory so strongly that changing mentors in 2010 could have reset the entire career topology?
It's important to understand that elite assistants are not shadows. They are co-architects whose craft is certified by proximity to repeated success. A change in mentor at that moment would have reweighted his signaling to hiring committees and reshaped his access to specific projects. Under Sampaoli, the documented sequence, club dominance at Universidad de Chile, then a Copa America title, created a dossier aligned with bold pressing and rapid transitions. Under Bielsa, hypothetically, the dossier might have centered on different pedagogical cadences and recruitment preferences. In conclusion, the divergence would not be cosmetic, it would be structural. Second question, counterfactual. What if Defensa y Justicia had won the Argentine League in 2018-2019 rather than finishing second? Such a title, for a club of modest budget, would have been a statistical outlier of the first order. Short term, this would probably have amplified offers from larger institutions domestically and perhaps accelerated a European opportunity. Long term, it might have constrained him as well, because overperformance at an underdog can induce inflated expectations at the next stop, where resource asymmetries level out and time horizons shrink. We observe in management literature a recurring trap. The underdog miracle is portable in narrative terms, but not always in infrastructural terms. A title could have fortified his bargaining power, yet also tethered him more tightly to a brand of perpetual overachievement that big clubs sometimes romanticize and then, when variance turns, penalize swiftly.
Can we maybe now look at club size? Do larger clubs necessarily accelerate a coach's reputation, or does visibility come with volatility that erodes gains when results normalize?
To elaborate, club size increases visibility and resource pools, but it also compresses patients' horizons. At Independiente and Racing, the scrutiny is structurally higher. Meanwhile, at Defensa y Justicia, alignment yielded iterative gains over multiple spells, culminating in the 2021 Recopa Sudamericana. In this context, a league title in 2019 might have rewritten his options set. However, as a matter of expected value, stability of fit can outperform raw scale of institution if the latter does not support the coach's developmental tempo. Third question, present day and ongoing. How do Beccacece's management styles adapt across cultural and competitive contexts? Argentina, Chile, Spain, and Ecuador. In Argentina, particularly with Defensa y Justicia, we see high-intensity training married to incremental player development. The institutional patience enabled structural consistency across 3 spells. In Chile, both as assistant earlier and later as head coach at Universidad de Chile, the environment demanded immediate recalibration amid scrutiny. The impulse to implement intensity met the constraint of time, producing volatility. In Spain at Elche, he inherited a crisis mid-season as the 4th manager. There, the emphasis logically shifted to defensive structure and competitiveness, a pragmatic contraction of ideas to stabilize variance. With Ecuador, international windows required condensed teaching, selection clarity, and an emphasis on transition efficiency. The 2-1 win over Germany at the World Cup illustrates organization and opportunism under tournament constraints, even if the round of 32 exit to Mexico underscores the slim margins of knockout football.
What comes to mind next is communication. What specific cultural adaptations might a coach like him make when moving from, say, a club in Argentina to a national team like Ecuador, or to a Spanish club in crisis?
Arguably 3 domains. First, pedagogy pacing. In national teams, the didactic unit is the FIFA window. So drills must encode principles rapidly, and terminology must be standardized to bridge club habits. Second, authority signaling. In big heritage clubs, the semiotics of leadership, press conferences, selection decisions under legacy expectations, need careful calibration to manage narratives. Third, staff configuration. When resources allow, complementary specialists can translate the coach's macro principles into micro interventions, from fitness to set pieces, in ways legible to local player archetypes. We should note that Beccacece's early experience with very young age groups likely enhanced his clarity of instruction, a transferable asset across these settings.
Maybe it's just me, but I often think the willingness to resign by mutual agreement is also a cultural choice. Does that preserve relationships and enable returns, like with Defensa y Justicia?
Clearly, the pattern of voluntary exits at natural inflection points tends to conserve reputational capital and maintain open channels. This then creates optionality. Returning to Defensa y Justicia multiple times is evidence of institutional trust, maintained by timely departures rather than acrimonious splits.
So, I guess that kind of sums it up. Different contexts, same core methodology, adjusted for tempo and expectation.
To summarize, Sebastián Beccacece is an Argentine manager shaped by early coaching, an extended partnership with Jorge Sampaoli, and head coach projects distinguished by development, intensity, and resilience in turbulent scenarios. We asked three big questions: how a reported choice in 2010 might have altered his mentorship vector, how a hypothetical league title in 2019 could have recast his opportunities and risks, and how, in the present, his management adapts across cultures and competitions. Further study, I suggest, should examine cross-cultural coaching transferability and the institutional mechanics that make underdog overperformance repeatable. Thank you for joining us on another lecture.
Thank you, Professor. That was helpful to think through, actually.